Every now and then, a singular human voice rises above all the noise and proves that with enough heart and determination, boundaries can be shattered one note at a time. Charley Pride had one of those voices. From the moment he stepped out onto modest stages in the American South, microphone in hand, he turned more than just heads. He turned centuries of assumption on its ear. His warm baritone bridged gaps that, at the time, felt impossible to cross. Listening to him was like hearing the long-lost sound of home, an intimate place where music transcends the divisions of skin color or social background and somehow reminds us we're more alike than different. No one would have guessed that a cotton-picking kid from rural Mississippi, whose early passion wasn't even singing but baseball, would become one of the most beloved figures in country music. And yet, the presence of that young boy in the fields, dreaming of brighter lights, forever changed what country music could be, and indeed, who could perform it. Charley Pride grew up in a home that overflowed with siblings, and personal space was a luxury no one even imagined. He was one of 11 children. Summers often found him out in the fields, hands quickly learning the drudgery of farm work. And yet, if you asked him back then what he envisioned for himself, his first dream wasn't to sing on a stage or to hold a shiny award. He wanted to become a professional baseball player. That dream was front and center, guiding his decisions and fueling his optimism as he ran around dusty diamonds, glove in hand, determined to pitch his way to stardom. All around him, radio stations were spinning records that shaped America's musical consciousness. Country tunes featuring fiddles and steel guitars drifted through the airwaves, capturing the yearning hearts of listeners across the nation. But few people could imagine an African-American man stepping into that spotlight, let alone as a mainstay. Despite this widespread assumption, Charley refused to let the narrative of the times define his future. He had a natural gift for singing, discovered in part through the gospel music he heard at church as well as the country ballads that crackled out of transistor radios. If he was aware that society didn't see him as the next big thing in country music, he didn't let it deter his wide-eyed ambition. Yet baseball was the immediate dream. When he was still just a teenager, Charley set his sights on the Negro American League. He joined the Memphis Red Sox, where he was recognized as a spirited and robust pitcher. The travel was grueling, money was scarce, and the crowds ranged from rowdy to practically non-existent. But he didn't mind. He was finally doing what he loved. Life on the road, however, was unpredictable. Opportunities to advance were slim, and the mainstream major leagues were only just starting to integrate. Disappointments inevitably rolled in with every missed chance at a higher-level contract. In those days, it took more than skill to survive in baseball. Pride faced daily challenges beyond the typical hurdles. There were moments of heartbreak when he realized that dreams might stay just out of reach, no matter how tightly he gripped the ball or how sharply his pitches curved. And it was during those endless bus rides and dusty road games that Charley's other talent, singing, began to blossom publicly. Teammates teased him good-naturedly about his voice, passing the time as he sang everything from gospel hymns to old country standards. Soon his voice became as big a draw in certain circles as his pitching arm. One of the lesser-known anecdotes of his early career happened when Charley found himself in Montana, playing for a semi-pro team after stints in the Negro American League. The team was struggling with finances, morale, and everything in between. To help pay the bills and keep his baseball ambitions alive, he took a job at a local smelter, hauling heavy loads and toiling in physically demanding shifts. By day, he'd sweat through back-breaking labor. By night, he'd head to practice or games. A camaraderie of sorts formed, anchored by the grit that united these men who were trying so hard to stay afloat. After a while, some of the guys discovered Charley's vocal gift. So they struck a peculiar but heartfelt deal. He would sing before games or in local bars to attract curious onlookers. It was a clever way to draw in a crowd, adding a layer of entertainment that might bring in a few more fans. Unexpectedly, word spread that there was this young African-American athlete with a golden voice performing in small clubs around town. People started showing up not just to see him pitch, but to hear him sing as well. One evening, a local businessman who had connections in the music industry happened to catch Charley performing on stage. The moment he heard that voice, he sensed something special. There was a warmth and clarity to Charley's baritone that transcended the smoky environment, cutting straight to the heart of anyone listening. This businessman introduced Charley to contacts in Nashville. Though Pride's baseball ambitions still burned brightly, he decided to at least consider the possibility of pursuing music more seriously. He had always harbored a quiet love for country music, partly shaped by his upbringing in the rural South, and partly by a personal resonance he felt with the genre's stories of heartache, perseverance, and redemption. In 1963, Charley Pride ventured into the heart of country music, Nashville, Tennessee. Nashville at that time could be an intimidating place, an industry built around tightly knit networks and family legacies, where outsiders had to work double time just to get a foot in the door. If you were African American, it was even tougher. Charley experienced that subtle skepticism from record executives. They weren't sure whether country radio stations would play his music or if country fans would accept him. At the same time, they couldn't deny his undeniable talent. Interestingly, one of the earliest decisions made around Charley's career was to avoid featuring his photograph prominently on album covers. Executives feared that potential buyers across certain regions of the country might have prejudices strong enough to reject his music outright if they knew he was black. This strategy was meant to let his voice capture hearts before any preconceived notions could get in the way. It was a complicated compromise, reflecting both the harsh realities of the times and the unwavering belief that Charley had something too good to ignore. Eventually, RCA Records took a chance on him. Initially, they released a few singles, effectively testing the waters. The first hint of mainstream attention came with Just Between You and Me, which charted in 1966. The reaction was immediate and enthusiastic, confirming what a few visionary figures in the industry had suspected. Charley Pride possessed a unique star power, and the public, for the most part, was ready to embrace him. Not everyone was thrilled. He'd sometimes encounter cold receptions from certain corners. But each new radio spin chipped away at old barriers. Music fans heard something genuine, pure, and honest in his tone. Soon, they were too engrossed in the emotion of his songs to worry about whether he fit the preconceived mold of a country singer. One rarely discussed detail is that, early on, some audiences at live shows reportedly didn't realize he was black until after he walked on stage, introduced himself, and began to sing. He liked to open sets with something playful, perhaps acknowledging the elephant in the room, with a gentle joke, then moving on to deliver a show that left fans in awe of his exceptional talent. According to a story that's been passed around quietly, an audience in Texas once fell into an awkward hush when he appeared, but within minutes he had them cheering, applauding, and forgetting about the friction altogether. That was his gift, bridging divides not with heavy-handed messages, but with soulful performances that struck the human chord in everyone. As the 1960s rolled into the 1970s, Charley Pride's career went into overdrive. He notched an impressive string of #1 country hits, cementing his status among the most successful acts of the genre. Is anybody going to San Antone, damn Cowliga, and kiss an angel good morning? Became iconic staples. Perhaps none soared higher than Kiss an Angel Good Morning, which dominated the charts and remains a beloved standard even decades later. The lyrics, simple and universal, invited listeners into a world of everyday romance and gentle reminders to cherish the ones we love. That's the heart of country music, telling stories of ordinary life, heartbreak, and hope. Pride delivered these stories as someone who lived them, who understood hard work and heartbreak in ways that transcended color lines. By 1971, Charley's success was so massive that he won the Country Music Association's Entertainer of the Year award, a groundbreaking achievement for any artist, let alone one who had grown up in segregated Mississippi. Further accolades rolled in, including repeated recognition as top male vocalist from the CMA. The trophies glimmered brightly, but for Charley, it was always about reaching people. Whether at a small-town fair or a glamorous national stage, he valued sincerity over spectacle. Audiences recognized that authenticity, flocking to his shows in droves. Those who worked with him often remarked on his quiet humility. Stories circulate about how he'd take time backstage to chat with local musicians, or how he'd calmly endure the occasional rude remark from individuals who still struggled with the sight of a black man leading a country lineup. Rather than retaliate or complain, Charley would show kindness, offering a warm handshake or a friendly conversation. It was a subtle form of defiance, meeting ignorance with unwavering grace and letting the music speak louder than any argument could. In interviews from later in his life, he hinted at moments of frustration and sorrow. Yet he never allowed these difficulties to overshadow his gratitude. He believed in forging connections, even when it seemed an uphill battle. Although it's rarely detailed in short overviews of his life, Charley carried with him the echo of those early baseball days. The discipline he'd acquired on the pitching mound, practice, resilience, teamwork, translated seamlessly into his approach to music. Once he set his mind on mastering a performance, he'd rehearse relentlessly, aiming to perfect every note. He saw his band members as teammates, building loyalty and mutual respect that shined through during concerts. Observers often noted that the entire crew seemed at ease on stage. They'd exchange knowing smiles, playful banter, and heartfelt moments that could only come from a leader who understood how to bond people together around a shared goal. Yet amid the adoration, controversy stirred as well. Some music fans and critics, particularly early on, debated whether Charley Pride should even be categorized as a black country singer, a label that inevitably made him stand out as an exception in a genre dominated by white artists. Certain critics speculated that he was capitalizing on the novelty factor, though that argument quickly lost steam once it became clear his talent was not a passing curiosity, but a force of nature. Others questioned whether the record label had the right approach by downplaying his race in album art and marketing materials. For many, it felt uncomfortable to see his face hidden from covers or mentioned only briefly in the liner notes. But the argument made by some executives was that they were simply protecting him from potential backlash in certain segments of the country audience, a reflection of the times where business decisions often bowed to a lingering prejudice in certain regions. Charley, for his part, displayed a pragmatic perspective. In later interviews, he acknowledged those early marketing tactics with a measure of understanding, explaining that he was more interested in letting the music speak for itself. Yet it remained a nuanced debate, revealing just how complicated racial issues were, especially in an industry as traditionally white as country music. Today, those controversies are revisited with fresh eyes. Some see the marketing decisions as an unfortunate necessity of the era, while others question whether it slowed progress toward true racial equality. Charley's legacy is thus intertwined with this ongoing conversation about representation, acceptance, and the slow dismantling of stereotypes. An emotionally charged moment in his career came when he walked onto the stage at the Grand Ole Opry. In 1967, he made his debut appearance, becoming one of the very few black performers to grace that legendary circle on the hallowed stage of the Riemann Auditorium. The crowd's reaction was a delicate mix of curiosity and genuine excitement, culminating in an ovation that shook the rafters. For Charley, performing at the Opry was the pinnacle of a lifelong dream, equivalent in prestige to a baseball player making it to the major leagues. And yet, despite the significance of that performance, he wouldn't be inducted as a full member until 1993, which some felt was long overdue. Watching him stand there, wearing a modest smile, one could sense the gravity of that moment. It was more than just a personal victory. It was a sign that country music itself could honor its diverse influences, if it only allowed itself to see beyond entrenched lines. One of the rarely cited stories from insiders around Nashville is that Charley often visited smaller, lesser-known clubs, even after achieving national fame, just to listen to up-and-coming musicians. He'd sometimes slip in quietly, take a seat in the back, and let the raw sound of a new singer or band wash over him. Every so often, he would approach the artist afterward, offering a word of encouragement or a helpful suggestion. It was a side of him most fans never witnessed, a testament to his genuine love for music and the community of artists behind it. That sense of generosity and curiosity never left him, even when he ascended to the highest ranks of the industry. Inevitably, Charley Pride became a figure of historical consequence, one whose impact on culture and society stretched far beyond music charts. He served as a beacon of possibility, subtly challenging narrow definitions of who could succeed in a genre that, for decades, had shown little diversity. His popularity among predominantly white audiences hinted that artistic excellence could and often did transcend racial divides. In the bigger picture, it showed how a performer could shape attitudes one concert at a time by simply sharing an authentic voice and presence. Those who study American cultural shifts point out that Pride's mainstream acceptance paved the way for other artists of color to enter country music. Though progress remained slow and the genre continued to wrestle with representation issues, the conversation changed after Charley Pride. He was living proof that the old walls didn't need to stand forever. For fans, his presence also validated a broader range of experiences. Listeners who felt marginalized or unseen found in his story an affirmation that they too could belong. Yet fame comes with unique pressures. At the height of his stardom, Charley had to navigate a breakneck schedule of recording sessions, tours, and public appearances. He found support in his wife Rosine, whom he married in 1956, long before fame ever came knocking. Their bond, forged in times of struggle, remained a steady anchor. Together they raised children, instilling in them a sense of respect for hard work, humility, and the same faith that had guided Charley through the hard days in Mississippi's cotton fields. While many star couples succumbed to the tension of life in the spotlight, Charley and Rosine remained a model of devotion, weathering storms hand in hand. Behind the scenes, there were quieter battles, moments of doubt and fear that every artist confronts. Pride admitted occasionally that he sometimes felt overshadowed by the attention on his race rather than the craftsmanship of his music. He understood the significance of being a trailblazer, but it also placed a weight on his shoulders that few people could comprehend. Even so, He found comfort in simple things: a well-pitched baseball in an off-season friendly, a circle of family members singing together at holiday gatherings, or those magical studio sessions when a new song came to life in real time. In the intricate tapestry of his experiences, success and struggle were threads woven tightly together. With decades passing, Charley Pride's position in country music's pantheon became more and more secure. In 2000, he was inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame, a long overdue recognition of his lasting influence. Fans from multiple generations continued discovering his songs. Often someone would mention that they grew up hearing their parents playing his records, and now they were passing that musical legacy onto their own children. Pride's body of work stands out as not just hits, but also deeply personal expressions of love, loss, and longing, the universal themes that define country music at its finest. Still, Charley's story wouldn't be complete without acknowledging that the nation's conversation on race and identity continued to evolve, often in turbulent ways. As more African American artists began stepping into the country spotlight, some with success, others facing obstacles reminiscent of earlier decades, Charley's legacy was repeatedly invoked. Was the industry truly more open now, or had it only inched forward? He sometimes talked about the younger generation's experiences, always offering words of support and urging fans to judge talent on its own merits. He remained an ambassador for unity at a time when divisions frequently splintered communities. In interviews toward the later stages of his life, Charley reflected on how far society had come and how much further it still had to go. He never wavered in his belief that sharing music could help break down barriers, even if only one heart at a time. Music is music, he once said in a conversation about the challenges he'd faced, and it should be for everybody. Over the years, he supported numerous charities and educational programs, quietly giving back to the communities that had once reminded him how hard real life can be. In some cases, he extended financial help to struggling artists or sports programs, combining his passions and forging opportunities for youth who might not otherwise get a fair shot. Despite his stardom, he never lost that sense of camaraderie he'd built in baseball dugouts and traveling teams. Nor did he relinquish the empathy that came from a life spent learning to handle adversity with grace. One emotionally striking and relatively unknown fact revolves around a small church in his hometown of Sledge. Decades into Charley's successful career, the congregation placed a plaque commemorating his achievements and the inspiration he provided to the community's young people. Whenever he visited, he would attend services quietly, avoiding any big public announcement. There's a poignant story of an elderly woman, someone who remembered Charley as a little boy running around barefoot in the dusty roads, telling him after a Sunday service, "You've done more than they ever expected, but exactly what I always knew you would." He teared up, responding simply, "I just followed the songs in my heart." Moments like these highlight the deeper emotional core of his life. A man who never forgot where he came from and who treasured the affirmation of the elders who'd watched him grow. When it comes to controversies, one recurring debate is whether Charley Pride did enough to address the racial injustices around him. Some critics felt he should have been more outspoken, using his platform to confront segregationist policies directly or protest racial discrimination. Charley's defenders argue that his mere presence was its own form of activism, that by excelling in a genre that rarely made room for a black star, he actively challenged racist assumptions and set an example that resonated far beyond any single protest speech. Pride himself sometimes spoke about this tension, suggesting that his way of breaking barriers was to focus on exceptional performance, personal kindness, and a steadfast refusal to be categorized solely by his race. He believed this approach made an enduring statement, even if it wasn't always accompanied by overt political declarations. In the grand tapestry of cultural history, Charley Pride's impact continues to ripple outward. He not only enriched country music with an extensive catalog of hits, but also expanded its audience and diversified its image. Generations have listened to his songs during family gatherings, on long car trips, and in moments of personal reflection. He was the voice that taught many that country isn't just a southern white genre, but rather a style of storytelling that belongs to anyone who's ever felt heartbreak, love, and yearning. His life story reminds us of the extraordinary things that can happen when passion meets opportunity, and when a person refuses to be limited by other people's assumptions. When he passed away on December 12, 2020, from complications related to COVID-19, the outpouring of grief from fans and fellow musicians was immense. Social media lit up with tributes, personal memories, and heartfelt anecdotes revealing just how many lives he had touched. Younger country singers recounted how listening to Charley Pride's records as children gave them the spark they needed to pursue their own dreams. Established veterans praised his generosity, recalling nights after awards shows when Charley stayed late to chat, laugh, and offer a piece of sincere advice. Fans from all walks of life remembered how his soothing baritone once carried them through painful breakups, lonely nights, and uncertain times. In the end, Charley Pride leaves behind more than a discography of memorable songs. He leaves a legacy of quiet bravery and gentle perseverance. He showed that greatness can spring from the harshest conditions of poverty and racial discrimination, and that even a single artist armed with a unique gift and guided by unwavering dedication can alter the course of an entire musical genre. As we look back on his life, we see a man who, in some ways, was as unassuming as he was groundbreaking, preferring to let his music do most of the talking. Nonetheless, his achievements speak volumes about the significance of representation, the universality of good storytelling, and the might of sincere artistry in a world that often clings to arbitrary divisions. We can learn a lot from Charley Pride's journey: the power of persistence, the redeeming force of music, and the indelible truth that genuine talent and sincerity can shift cultural landscapes more effectively than the strongest protest sign. Listening to his songs now, it's tempting to close our eyes and remember that despite all the obstacles he faced, he never abandoned hope or faith in the dreams that guided him from childhood. The heart he poured into every lyric and melody still resonates, reminding us that greatness transcends boundaries of color or class, and that the human spirit, once it decides to sing, cannot be silenced. And that's all for today's video. If you like this video, hit that thumbs up, let us know your thoughts in the comments section, and subscribe so you won't miss out on future uploads. See you next time.